What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This is
RedPubPod.
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 a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Red Hawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us with RedPubPod. As you guys know, this is the podcast from Red Hawk Publications, which is a division of Catawba Valley Community College in little old Hickory, North Carolina. We are so happy today to have some guests. Just to introduce myself, if you're not as familiar, my name is Patty Thompson. I am the acquisitions editor with Red Hawk Publications, and we've put out many books, many genre, but poetry does seem to be near and dear to us. So today we have a guest who has just had her first poetry collection come out, and that would be Maeve Fox. Letting Go of Me. We're really looking forward to getting into this and asking you lots of good questions. But I should share, because my typical co-host, Robert Knipe, is not here, we have a very special guest who's going to help me ask a few questions of May. For those of you that are familiar with Robert Knipe, our chief publisher, right now, he's kind of under the weather, and we anticipate him getting back. But in the interim, it's kind of fun to have the ability to have some special guest co-hosts. So, Jay, I want to thank you.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad to be here.
Jay Orlando, and there's a story with the reason why we're having Jay here, but Jay Orlando also has a book published by us, Tangled Lineage, but this is all about Maeve today, by the way. But still, Jay was able to be one of our published authors, one of our poets, and so we thank you for helping us today with Maeve.
No problem.
Maeve, you looking good, girl? What you up to?
Work. Taking a little break from work to do this. So
Great. Well, I do thank you for taking the time to do this.
yeah, of course.
Right. April is Poetry Month, and you did get right in there, man. You had your book come right out in time for Poetry Month. Letting Go of Me. This is one of those books where, you know, there's a story beyond the story, not just a book release, but there's a reason why this book came out. Would you mind sharing with our audience how the transformative journey that you took ended up being this collection?
Yeah, of course. So I am a trans woman, and about 5 years ago now, oh my gosh, it is almost 5 years. Back in 2020, I transitioned. And so I had like tons of poetry that I had written before I transitioned, and was just starting to really get back into writing. And I realized that I wanted to do something that I thought would be an homage to the person that I used to be pre-transition. And I could have gone in, I could have changed all the pronouns, I could have made them more personal to me now, but I felt like a lot of those were snapshots into his life and not as much mine or what I was living now, at least. So that's why I decided to release this book as both of us, because it's both a way of, you know, honoring who he is, paying an homage to who he was and is, and also allowing me to move forward creatively, which is, you know, where the title goes, letting go of me, being able to let go of all that baggage, of all those things that I've sort of moved away from.
You know, as I read the collection, I remember looking at the intro and realizing, oh, there's John and there's Maeve. It was kind of fun because it made me think, I wonder, oh, this sounds like John. You know what I mean? I'm reading it and I'm thinking, oh, this sounds like John. As I got a little bit more personal, I'm like, oh, this is Maeve. And I'm getting chills as I say this, but even as a reader, you kind of go through that transformative journey with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Awesome.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. Just kind of curious, how do you see John now? Because you mentioned snapshot and part of your past, but yet you still have words.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think evolves a little bit as we go. At first, when I first transitioned, I was really quick to put distance, to make that spread, to make sure that everyone who knew me beforehand and everyone who was getting to know me put that space between, put that semicolon there to say, this was then, this is now. But obviously, everything that happened to John also affects who I am now. I mean, I think everybody goes through transitions to some point. The person you were at 30 is not the person you are at 40. Definitely not the person you were at 20, right? And you can look back at those things and you can say, yeah, these were great things, and a lot of these things that happened were really good. But I have moved away from those things. Those are collected volumes in the book and the title poem. I think I say that you can put them on the shelf. You can put those memories on the shelf and pick them back up anytime you want to read them. But I'm moving away from that identity.
Jay, I want to kind of jump in just a little bit. If you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience your special relationship with Maeve, because you were called in, and I don't mind you discussing that.
Yeah. So I'm a trans man, and I had my first book published by Red Hawk Publications, which was also about my transition as a trans man and an Appalachian. And that was something that Maeve and I, of course, have in common. We're both trans. We're both very firmly from the Appalachian region. We're both very proud of that fact. And so I was kind of called in to give notes on the first draft and kind of help out with guiding what the book would become in a small way. One of the things that I just want to say, if I can be a little embarrassing and gush a little bit, is just how proud I am of how far this book has come. Maeve, you really knocked it out of the park.
Thank you.
And just seeing you grow as a poet at the same time as reading about your journey has been a privilege. And I actually wanted to ask you, I noticed a lot of, I was reading through some of the book this morning again, refreshing my memory. I just want to say, you have that poem about the crazy ass bird. Mm-hmm. And I related to that poem so much this morning, reading about that crazy ass bird just beating against a window. How did you come to some of these themes that you see throughout the book? Birds are a recurring thing that I've seen a few times in there. What kind of themes pervade the book, and how, obviously your trans identity is at the forefront, but there's other identities interspersed throughout there, and I'd love to talk a little bit about those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Birds particularly, in the crazy ass birds, I mentioned the National Geographic Book of Wild Animals. And I don't know if everybody had this book growing up. It was a table, like a coffee table book from National Geographic, and it had all the plants, animals, birds, and that sort of thing. And I loved animals. It was a special relationship that I had with my grandfather. And I poured through that book. I drew illustrations out of that book, right? I copied illustrations. I had page numbers memorized where I could say, this bird is on this page and this animal is on this page. And so animals and birds in particular have always been I've always had a special relationship with them, Birds have that ability to go where they want to go. They have this sense of building their own language and building their own sense of freedom. And so, yeah, that's very much one of the other themes that I touch into a lot are climbing vines and things like that. I've always loved honeysuckle and jasmine and wisteria. I don't know. I've always been really attracted to those. Even kudzu, which I know you're up in Pennsylvania, so I don't know if you have kudzu as badly as we have down here in the South, but it pervades everything. You can.
My partner's from South Carolina, so yeah, I've seen the just destruction.
Yeah, and even as a destructive plant, it still I don't know, the fact that it just like transforms
Right.
whatever it's on has always been very endearing to me.
Hey, would you mind reading that poem for us? I know it happens to be on page 23, but I think maybe folks might enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me pull it up.
And while Maeve does that, I just want to remind people, because I hear my Robert Knipe inner voice saying, don't forget to get this book by Maeve Fox. Let me know at redhawkpublications.com. It's available. And if you get over $20, it's free shipping. So buy yourself two, one for you and one for your friend. That's a nice advertisement for Red Hawk Publications.
Absolutely.
And while you're at it, go and get Jay's. That'll be your $2. Get your free shipping.
Yeah, okay. So this poem is called Crazy Ass Birds, and it is absolutely a true story. It's one of my family's favorite stories to tell about me. I think it's informative for who I was as a kid, and it's very informative for who my grandfather was as a person as well. So, Crazy Ass Birds. We stood in the backyard examining the body of a tiny brown bird that had shattered its fragile neck, slamming in the solarium window. What we have here is a crazy-ass bird, my pawpaw explained. I was much too gullible to see the sparkle of mischief in his ancient eyes. That man was my world. I followed him around, thirsty for every drop of knowledge he gave. I picked up the bird and buried it before the cat made it into a meal. Later on, I frantically scrambled through the National Geographic Book of Wild Animals. There was no mention of crazy-ass birds. My Meemaw wasn't nearly as amused as he was when I told her what I was looking for. I still imagine that crazy-ass bird flying in the windows, chasing reflections of itself, racing with all speed and no self-preservation, wings beating to match a frantic heart, resulting in nothing more than a thump on a plate glass window.
I love that poem.
You are as much a poet as you are an amazing storyteller, Maeve. And shortly before you came on, I was telling Jay, one of the other reasons I really like your poetry collection is the dramatic person in me. As I read your poetry out loud, it's fun. It's just fun. I mean, I used to do dramatic interp in school. So, I mean, taking different poems and reading them and trying to be all meaningful. I enjoy reading your poetry out loud just because you're telling stories, but you're weird. Your words are just so clever. I think somewhere in there you've got queerness of a quandary.
Yeah.
Like, who does that? I mean, it's wonderful phrases that you come up with. So I thank you for reciting that for us. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love wordplay. I've always loved wordplay. It's fun to be able to see the sounds of words. So one thing I think that's important to probably talk about is that I have a really not a condition, I guess, but it's a little quirk called synesthesia. Synesthesia is a thing where your brain sometimes switches tracks when it comes to different senses. And particularly for me, sounds have a lot of feeling to them, a lot of physical feeling to them. So I'm always loving alliteration and the feeling and the shape that words take and the way they feel when I say them. I do write a lot of poetry that I want to be able to say, that I want to be able to hear, that I want to be able to feel when I speak it.
And I think any reader will sense that. And I'll put a challenge out there. If there's anyone listening who has to come up with an interesting, unique poem that you need to dramatize for those dramatic interp competitions, this is one where you can pick it up and you're good to go. You've got some really nice words in there. And again, it's practiced. Speaking of which, writers' communities, and this is important because for our listeners, I want them to realize that the initial submission was not accepted, but I knew it had jewels in there. I knew you had some diamonds. You just needed them to be cleaned up a little bit, which is why we brought in some folks to kind of give you some good notes. Jay being one, Scott Owens being another. So you've had some amazing mentors too. Didn't take much shining, but you got this collection down. tell us about the writing community that you belong to in this area.
Oh, absolutely. We have a poetry meetup that happens once a month that has been going on. Scott's been running that for almost 20 years now. It's been a very long time. And out of that group, we have a small group of about 7, 8 people that we meet up and workshop a lot of our poems. And it's great because we get so many different styles of poetry that come in, and they look at your poem and they take a thing that you love, right? It is words that you have shaped and you love, and it is your baby. And they look at it and they say, okay, well, how can we mold this to be something that reflects to everyone so that you can express what you're feeling fully outward? And having people who have different styles really makes that, I mean, it really, really makes that connection work. Because a lot of times when you write poems for yourself, which I think is perfectly fine to write poems for yourself, if somebody else hasn't read them, you might be saying things that in your head, you know how you feel about it. But on paper, it doesn't always connect. That the poem that I read, Crazy Ass Birds, doesn't necessarily, that's a story for me. That's a story of my family. It's one that we've told over and over. But somebody else reading it, the initial draft of it might say, well, there are things that we don't connect to. Why don't we connect to it? Did you step back from it to try to say something? Or did you stay in that immediacy? So having all of those group of people to be able to come in and give you suggestions, it's not like they come in and say, this is how we want you to change your poem. They say, these are our suggestions, take them and leave them. Scott has a really great saying where he says, you know, he's a writer, or he's a writer and a professor. And he says, people come to my class and they ask about their poem and they take none of the suggestions that I give them. They've not done themselves a service. If they take all of the suggestions that I give them and put them in, they have also not done themselves a service. That you have to hit that median. And I think the other thing important about the writing group is that, like, and with all groups, reading other people's work is quintessential to being a better writer. Jay's book, for instance, A Tangled Lineage, I picked it up the first time I met you, right? The first time I met you, you said, this is another LGBTQ author. Pick it up, read it, tell me what you think. And I was enthralled, especially because Jay and I live on sort of not necessarily completely opposite ends of Appalachia, but our versions of Appalachia have variations. They're different than each other. So to hear those words that were both familiar, a familiar setting and a very different setting, really sparked a lot in me. There were several poems that I sat down and wrote after I read Jay's book that were absolutely inspired by Jay's words.
You're going to make me cry.
Oh my God. I couldn't have asked for a better response to that question about the importance of readers. But it also reminds me of something, Robert, you're here in my room. Robert always says to his students, and I've heard him say it on our pods also, the writer writes, but the reader reads.
Mm-hmm.
So if you write something for you, and as a reader, if I read it and I don't connect to it, that I don't have that resonation, I don't have that universality to it, it's going to be a little cold, and I'm just going to go to the next page, and maybe that next poem will connect. You know, you don't want to have people keep doing that, especially if it's a long form like a poem, like a novel or something. So it's so important to have those writing groups. And we are talking about Scott Owens, by the way, for those of our listeners in Uzbekistan. Scott Owens owns a coffee shop here in Hickory, North Carolina, Tasteful Beans, which, by the way, is our sponsor. But in addition, he's very, very gracious to be the host of Poetry Hickory, where once a month poets get together and do readings. It's been going on for, again, 17, 18 years. He also has some private writing groups. He's a professor at Lenore Ryan University. And I know he's been very influential to you, Maeve.
Absolutely.
So thank you for giving a shout out to him. Jay, are you also like in a writer's group? I'm trying to think about what we talked about.
Yeah. We have a group here in Pennsylvania that meets once a month. It's a poetry open mic group called Poeming Through the Dark, and it is run by my friend Amanda, who has been doing this for, probably over 15 years now. She just gets writers together and says, get up there and share. And we do, and we've kind of we have our community circle group on Facebook where we kind of build each other up, and then we get up on that stage. But it's a good experience, yeah. So very important to getting your work polished, and just hearing it out loud in a space with other people even is really important, I think.
I have a question for both of you, because you're both storytellers and you're both poets. How do you feel about it when other people read your poems out loud? I would think that maybe you feel like a Beyonce or a Taylor Swift or Neil Young. When you have somebody else record your song, what an honor, what a privilege that they took something and maybe, put their tune and their jazz to it. How do you guys feel about having heard someone else read your poems? Maeve, have you had anyone read yours out loud?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite thing about it is I know how the poem feels to me. I know how I interpret it. I know how I look at the lines. I know how I create the shape of the poem. Someone else comes in and they connect to that poem, maybe in a way that I don't. Maybe there's a couple lines in there that hit them that I don't emphasize as much. And hearing them hit that space and put their interpretation and say, this is where this poem connects to me is awesome. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Gotta be like jazz. Jay, have you had anyone else read yours?
I actually was going to just say it's a lot like listening to jazz. Yeah, it's because you get that moment of where are their flourishes going to be, right? Like where are their resonance going to fall on the page? Because like Maeve said, you know what parts you emphasize and what hits home to you, but hearing somebody else read it's made me reevaluate some lines in the past that I wasn't maybe the biggest fan of in my own work. And it's made me realize that, I did put that there for a reason. And that reason is that it connected with that other person.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going down this lane for a very particular reason, Maeve. We've asked Jay to surprise you and read one of your poems.
Oh.
I thought that would be a nice surprise to have to hear Jay read one.
I am excited.
Yes.
Which one?
I picked, if I can get to the right page, because I'm very good at this and prepared.
Me too.
I picked of all the things before, after, and in between.
You're gonna make me cry, aren't you?
Well, I don't know, maybe. So I'm going to read Maeve's poem from her book, Letting Go of Me, of all the things before, after, and in between. And I'll try not to mess up because I'm a little nervous. When I say that I love you, what I mean is that I want to love you like kudzu loves an old house in a field, which is to say I want to wrap around you so tight that no one else can access you without going through me. I want to consume you in my deep green life and hide you from every hurt. You see, lots of things I've loved have moved on from me, from this situation, from this life. My desire is to grow around you in such a way that we are inseparable, indistinguishable. When I say that I love you, what I mean is that I am a fish struggling to swim past a large dam that has been erected directly in my path. When I was young, love tried to crush me under the weight of another's love for themselves. I nearly drowned under the waters of her presence, willing to surrender my last breaths to prove myself. And so when I say that I love you, what I mean is that I am dying. When I say that I love you, what I mean is that I will love you like planets in orbit, a space where inconsistency is the struggle between the gravity of affection and the comfort of the cold independence of stars blinking in the void. I will cherish you at the apogee of my orbit and pine for the cold when I am in your arms, which is not to say that I do not want you, more that love has always been fraught with meteors, which leave craters in my soul until I no longer resemble myself. When I say that I love you, what I mean is that I am terrified. Terrified of love, of you, of me, of all the things before, after, and in between.
Holy hell.
My favorite poem. It's the favorite poem I've ever written, honestly.
It's a beautiful poem.
A lot of vulnerability there.
It's a poem about love. There are two love poems in this book. One is dedicated to my husband, who passed away in 2021. And this one is about vulnerability, about being honest about love. And I think that more love poems should be that way. Strip away cliches and really dig into love is a terrifying thing sometimes. It's worthwhile, but, to give yourself over to someone, to open yourself to that. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a poem. You said it's a poem about vulnerability, and love is vulnerability in a sense, and that's what I really resonated with when I first read that poem, is that it is an essence of making yourself available, making yourself open. And I think that's what poetry is about at its core, is sharing deeply and without reservation. And that's what makes it so scary to get up on those stages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you put a huge amount of yourself out there.
We spoke a little earlier about writing community and the importance of it, having your trusted readers. How have you been received, maybe not just within your local poetry circle, but poets in general? Maeve?
Not to toot my own horn, but I guess that's what we're kind of doing here anyway. I also read down in Huntersville. My really good friend Leslie Ruprack down in Huntersville has another great monthly poetry reading. They've been going, they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and they always have featured readers. And one of the readers was Jackie Shelton Green. And I read the first poem in the book, Assembling a Woman Over the Years, which is really the quintessential, this is who I am as a trans woman, right? Poem. And after the reading was done, she came up to me and she said, "This is great, and I need you to keep going." And to have Jackie Shelton Green, who is the poet laureate of North Carolina, tell me that was just like...
That's a big deal.
Well, now I can't stop, right? now I'm not allowed to stop. Literally sat in my car afterwards and was just awestruck to have someone that talented and that with such a powerful voice tell me that my words are worth hearing. Mm-hmm. One of the things she said is that your story is worth telling. And that's what this book is. My story is worth telling. And one of the things that I really hope, and that I've heard from people when I've done readings, is that they connect with things in that book on a level that they weren't expecting sometimes. And that's what poetry should do. Poetry should be a transformative process. Reading poetry should be a transformative process. It should find something in you that just changes fundamentally after you've read the poem. One of my favorite poems is poet's Z.E. Cummings. I remember reading his stuff in early high school. I don't think I was ever the same after reading his poetry. It changed something fundamentally about how I, as a young writer, looked at the world. Getting that, my first reading was at a Trans Day of Visibility event back in the beginning of April. And when I finished reading and I was at the thing and was selling books, so many people came up to me and said, it's a great thing to hear another trans voice, to hear a trans voice out loud, and to hear a trans voice not afraid to speak their story, and to do so in a way that is both vulnerable and also powerful and truthful, without being too clutched in some of the despair that I think we can find ourselves vulnerable to in the current, climate.
And I'll tell you what, speaking of that, and knowing that, the part of North Carolina we live in, Western North Carolina, and I'm sure it's probably the same for you, Jay, where you are in the Appalachian parts of Pennsylvania. I asked you earlier how you were received by the poetry community. Getting Jackie Shelton Green's nod of approval says a lot. How would you say you've been received by your friends and family with this book? Friends, family, colleagues?
Loved it. Love it. Every time I talk to people, even people who, I get things all the time, and I am so bad at taking compliments. One of the things that this book has been a big lesson for me is learning to own your successes, right? To own the things that you've accomplished. I'm 44 years old. This is my first poetry collection. I've been writing poetry for my entire life, nearly. So it took me a long while to get there, and to have people at every reading that I do come up and say, I love this about your poem, or I love your performance, the way you perform. I haven't had any problems with people. And I think that poetry communities are probably a little bit of a special environment for that. It would have to be a pretty interesting poetry community to see some of the people that come in and would have an issue, right? So I don't think I've had any negative reception really at all. And I mean, we're in Hickory, North Carolina. Most of our writers are that we have in our normal writing career there. Most of them are older. Most of them have lived in the mountains their whole life. And the thing about the Appalachian Mountains, and I think Jay will agree, is that, yes, we can be closed off sometimes, but we have a huge amount of heart.
Amen.
Huge amount of heart. And we understand how to be, we've been vulnerable. We've been vulnerable our whole existence. So when someone opens that vulnerability up to you, as an Appalachian, you say, you accept it, you take it in and you accept it. And that's it. That's the heart. That's the heart of being an Appalachian girl.
I love that. I love that about our community here. Do you have one more poem you want to read to us? One of yours, or something that's hitting you today?
I do. I had two picked out, and I think the one that I want to read is this one. So this one is called Southern Girls Are Made Of. I have a partner who says this is his favorite poem, so I figured I would read it for his sake, and also I love it too. Southern girls are made of. I am constructed of thorns and briars, the kind that rip jeans and leave reminders and sharp stings across roving hands. I am thick underbrush in the way, hiding mysteries on the forest floor. I am warning signs that the way forward is wild and dangerous. I am wrapped in creeping flowered vines, thick and sweet, lingering in the air and haunting minds long after I am gone. I am flowers thriving in the wild and wilting quickly in confinement. I am the scent of laughter on the wind, the beam of sun that lulls you into a nap on a warm afternoon. I am barefoot on hot summer asphalt, never standing still, dancing across obstacles. I am thick calluses that shield away heat and burrs that I come across. I am brave and fearless, willing to take on any challenge. I am my mama's stubborn side. Even when I know hurt is going to come, I'll step out on that parking lot. I am a Southern girl, and we were never meant to be sugar and spice. We are sharp grit and gravel. We are soft flowers and lace. We are fierce smiles and quick wit. We are built between mountains and sea. we are what our mamas and meemaws shaped us to be.
I love that. And I'm a girl.
That was actually the other one I had earmarked in the book today.
It's beautiful.
So we are on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. It's my homage to the girlhood that I didn't get to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a trans person, you can lament a lot, and mourn a little bit what you didn't have. But I think ultimately one of the great things about transition, and Jay might be able to agree with me here, is being able to reclaim that when you do transition. When you do yourself, being able to say, I can be a girl and I can be that Southern girl that I have always wanted to be.
We are kind of at the end, so I do want to thank you both. But again, a big shout out to our sponsor, Tasteful Beans, owned by Scott Owens in downtown Hickory. Go get yourself a cup of joe, and on every second Tuesday of the month, hang out at Poetry Hickory, because I totally dig what Scott's doing with our community of writers. And again, we encourage everybody to go to our website, redhawkpublications.com, and pick up Maeve Fox's new book of poetry, Letting Go of Me. While you're there, you go ahead and get Jay's too, Tangled Lineage. Mm-hmm. I just think we have more with you two, and I hope and pray that we get to see the two of you maybe do some work together. Is that a possibility, by the way?
Oh, absolutely.
We've had conversations.
We're working on it.
Distance is a little thing, but I would love to get Jay down to our Hickory. And I would love to go visit the other section of Appalachia,
Amen.
How neat.
Never been there. So never been to the mountains there. I've been to the cities in Philadelphia, but never been up in the mountains. So it would be great.
Well, Jay, a big shout out and thank you for being my very special guest co-host today.
Of course, no problem.
It really means a lot to me. Maeve, once again, congratulations. I couldn't be more proud of you. And I know our community is very, very proud of you. So
thank you.
As Jackie says, get going. You got another book in you.
It's on the way.
All righty. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Please check out our website. If you need to see what we're up to, check out our social media accounts on Instagram and Facebook. I try my best to keep that up. And other than that, the only thing I have to ask you, Maeve, is just repeat after me. RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Oh, you did it too easy. You already. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you on our next edition.
This is
RedPubPod.
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 a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Red Hawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
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 Oh, you did it too easy.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.